Today we are going to show you how to disassemble and clean your 3-lug mount. First, we're going to need to remove the 3-lug mount from our silencer. So we'll break that loose with the proper fitting 3-pin tool. And next, we're going to need to fix our tool in a vise. You're going to take your tool, line it up best you can with the top edge of your vise, kind of like that. Cinch that down to hold it nice and tight. And I will say, most people probably won't ever need to clean their 3-lug mount realistically. This one's had, I believe, around 4,000 or 5,000 rounds through it, and it actually still works just fine. So don't clean it unnecessarily if you don't need to. It's designed in a way where it is somewhat self-cleaning, so you don't have to service it all the time. It's not something most people have to worry about. If it gets to the point where you're actually seeing carbon build up in chunks kind of inside, that might be a point where you want to take it apart and clean it. So we're going to take our 3-lug mount and we're going to put it right on top of our tool, lining up the pins to hold it like that. And then this top part, the hex nut part, we call it the retainer, we're just going to break that loose. It's a standard right-hand thread, so counterclockwise will break it loose. It's a 7/8 size, so I'm going to use a 7/8 socket in this mini breaker bar. And it is a little bit wobbly, so just make sure you kind of put some weight on it to hold it nice and center, and then break it loose. That is one way to do it. A little more convenient way to do it, if you have it, is an impact driver. So I can just put my socket on there, slide it right over the top, makes it a lot easier. So I've got my retainer that comes out, wiggle my piston out of there. So I've got all my pieces apart now. Got the 3-lug housing, the retainer, the spring, and the piston, which has an O-ring on it. And if you're taking this apart, check your O-ring, make sure it's not damaged. If it has any significant cracks or gashes in it, you might want to replace it. I mean, if you're taking this apart, maybe just replace it anyway. It's a standard size 18 O-ring, which is the same size of O-ring we use in our piston retainers across our entire product line. So from here, just have to do a little bit of scrubbing. So I'm going to throw on some gloves because I'm going to be playing with some chemicals. To clean your components, these are all hardened 17/4 stainless steel, so you can be pretty aggressive with whatever you choose. I'm just going to use some CLP and a brush. All right, so when I was cleaning this on the housing, for most of the stuff I just used a brush and some CLP. You can use a pick to kind of break up any little chunks of carbon you might find at the bottom. There, just be careful not to scratch anything up. The inside surface on this is pretty smooth to help that O-ring slide nice and smoothly. On this piston, you just beware of this sharp edge. This edge here and the bottom edge of the retainer here are intentionally pretty square and sharp to help it, because those move past each other. So as you get carbon buildup, that kind of helps break it off. So those are a little sharp, so be careful with your fingers. All right, let's put this thing back together. So I'm going to take my piston, put my O-ring on there, and I want to use a grease. You can use an oil. Grease just holds up to temperature really well, stays more tacky, doesn't dry up as easily. So it's a little better of a long-term lubricant. So I'm just going to goober some grease around my O-ring. I'm going to put some on the inside of the housing for good measure. I'm going to slide my piston inside the housing. Just kind of wiggle it around with my thumb to help it move past those ports. Drop my spring in, and then my retainer goes in last. And I'm going to get that started with my fingers. And then from here, I'm going to put it back on my tool in the vise. And that's going to hold it in place so I can get some good torque on it. So using my torque wrench, I'm going to set it to 180 inch-pounds. I put my hand around it, just kind of hold it steady because it's not super rigid. And there we go. So 180 inch-pounds, that makes it so it'll stay put. We've never had one come loose during firing. Torquing them to that, and you don't need thread locker. And to make sure it's not a total pain in the butt to take it off if you ever need to service it again. And that's about it. Your 3-lug is fresh and ready to go again.